Domestic violence and intimate partner violence are defined as a pattern of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. It is a means of control, where isolation and dependence become the key. It can be coercive, manipulative, or exploitive of one's vulnerabilities, such as purposely placing them in harm's way during a crisis, like that of the current pandemic, COVID-19. This abuse affects 1 in 4 women in the United States, and oftentimes the chain of abuse can lead to death. In 2019, it was estimated that approximately 50 women per month are shot by their partner. When I first started conducting these interviews, it was my intention to showcase the many silenced details behind the issue of domestic violence, the many statistics attached to the issue, especially during this time of crisis. I found, however, that it was community solutions that kept taking center stage. The definition on community can be a broad one, but it can also be an incredibly personal and specific one. Community can be delivered through the workplace, a best friend, a cultural group, a local news story, or a grassroots organization. There are a number of pieces that make up the whole. And the more I interviewed these community leaders, the more I realized just how important community is to this issue.
I work in the Department of Public Health. Public health is very data-driven. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are impacted. And originally, it was shocking to me. And the how widespread it was shocking to me. DV is impacted by everything, but we don't always include DV in our conversations about either preparation or response. We don't need to show an increase in domestic violence to demand that people respond to domestic violence. It's already a huge, horrible problem. You have to have a system that recognizes humanity.
I believe in an abolitionist vision for our country, one in which mass incarceration, mass imprisonment isn't the way in which we address the real problems in our society. Where my grandmother was brutally killed on November 1st of 1965 in downtown Los Angeles, and a strange lover gunned her down. The violence that this individual demonstrated in killing my grandmother could have been abated if there were other interventions available prior to him carrying a gun and using it. It's up to all of us to create this environment where we can heal, where we can be safe, where we can be free.
There was one time when I called a hotline just to be able to talk. The lady who answered the phone was just going on and on and on about these resources that I didn't call for. She kept cutting me off. And you have to be careful sometimes because a victim could be in a very, very fragile space. Allowing them just to talk can keep them from doing something to themselves. Please just listen. Just listen.
When I was 28, I was dating the LAPD officer. I was a deputy sheriff. That was 2.5 years of hell. He put a knife to my throat and gun to my head. People often wonder, well, you were in law enforcement. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? There were no laws on the books back then. We need to teach. We need to be willing to share because this is a community issue.
These are the pillars of community. They're in our courtrooms, police stations, churches, within our teachers, neighbors, organizations, and resources. They reside in our local news, town halls, and city centers. This is what makes up communications infrastructure for local neighborhoods and citizens. It's where their collective voices can be spoken and heard. It sounds simple on paper, but it requires accountability, patience, and empathy. Humanity. Collectivity. This is where the solutions lie. And this is where the journey to thriving begins for a victim who's been silenced.